so I left corporate America in 2002. I started a company basically to take transformational tools into corporations to ease this relationship with work. My core fascination is, what is the relationship between self and work? And that's what really drove me, because I can look out the window and I can see a blade of grass. It is not fighting being a blade of grass. A grain of sugar is not fighting being a grain of sugar. The wind does not fight being the wind. Why is it that human beings fight function and contribution? Why? Really simple stuff. And so I figured, I don't know the answers to that questions, but I do know that there are countless wisdom tools and cognitive behavioral tools, et cetera, to help people get underneath it.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Tevis Trower, who's going to teach us about radical success in life. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote is from Robert Greene in Mastery. Engaged in the creative process, we feel more alive than ever because we're making something and not merely consuming. Masters of the small reality we create. In doing this work, we are in fact creating ourselves. That's what we're going to talk about today. Creating ourselves in a true and authentic way. Before we get to that, let's review last week's action step, which was about needs versus wants. Do you know them for you? Do you really need to challenge the list of your needs and wants? I'm constantly understanding this, and also, how did I get this need or want? And is it truly in line with me? Otherwise, we waste our life and our money. So get clarity. Create the time to think and examine what you're doing and why you're doing it. And is it a true need? Or is it a want? And what's the difference? The question I have is, do you own your life, or does work own you? We're going to talk about that today. About taking the road less traveled, and the one that's congruent with who you are and the skills you have, and being truthful to ourselves about that. Not easy. Can you answer the question, what brings you joy? Do you get to experience that every day? It really doesn't matter if you fit into society's view of how you're supposed to behave and act in the path you're supposed to take. And that's a big part of what we're going to chat about today. We're going to share how to achieve radical success in your life. And that doesn't necessarily mean $1 billion, because $1 billion won't make you much happier. It's about you and conquering you. Tevis Trower is a leadership futurist and innovator in optimizing corporations through fostering greatness in their leaders. She's the founder and CEO of Balance Integration and author of The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success. It was a bestseller in Megatrends 2010 as corporate mindfulness guru for the new millennium. Tevis has assisted powerful organizations ranging from Disney to Morgan Stanley in optimizing their most precious asset, human beings. Let's meet Tevis. Welcome to Richer Soul, Tevis Trower. It's great to have you join us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Rocky.
And I'm happy to chat with you, and I enjoyed the book. Let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh my God, what was it like growing up? Well, it was the 70s, and my dad was a Montessori teacher, so no, we did not have a lot of money. My mom was a respiratory therapist and very humble, but culturally curious and intellectually curious. There were people of every type and stripe coming through our home, every strata of society, every color of skin, not every nationality, but just a very, very wide social landscape. My parents were pretty active socializers, and I really think that they taught me, as many people who come from a blue-collar background are taught, right? They taught me a certain mistrust of money and a certain sense that kind of a fearfulness and a respectfulness towards people that have it, but kind of a class divide, kind of, what do they know that I don't know kind of thing. And so I grew up with, I think, an inherited and a legacy that predisposes worry about money. And so I absolutely wholeheartedly rejected all of that because I am the rebel of my family.
I was going to ask you, did that hinder you later in life? But it sounds like because you're the rebel, you just said, I'm not buying it.
Well, they were the black sheep of their family because they were the ones who went off and went to grad school and traveled the world, et cetera, et cetera. And I think I got the black sheep gene as well, and just kind of played it out in other ways. I think the blessing of growing up with such a broad exposure and truly, truly humble, but very smart people bringing me up in the world, I think it really gave me this ability to feel my own worth no matter who I was around.
And that was that broad exposure to a variety of different kinds of peoples. Out of curiosity, because I grew up in Montessori, and I know in the 70s, back then, nobody was willing to pay premium prices like they are now for schools and everything else. Were you raised with Montessori, or?
We went to Italy, actually, for my dad to be trained, because back then, be trained as a Montessori teacher, you had to go to Italy. And so we lived in Bergamo, and I still can remember the apartment. I remember the landlady. I remember the persimmon tree. They call them kaki. And in Italy, I remember the bathtub being in the kitchen because that's what they did in Europe in those days. I remember all of that. And yeah, I grew up, my first exposure to school was in a Montessori school in Italy. So I was taught in Italian. I don't speak Italian now, but I do speak Spanish and Portuguese, and I think that probably helped. And I stuck with Montessori until about end of fifth grade. Sixth grade, I transitioned over to public school.
And Montessori is a very different and much more practical way of teaching. And it's Maria Montessori, right? Yeah. So she was Italian, and that was
Yep.
Where that all came from.
Well, she was interested in consciousness, and she was interested in the acquisition of information, and she was interested in the human brain and how the human brain acquires information and makes it useful. And so for those of us who are life junkies, who are meaning junkies and leadership junkies, right? There's a lot of food for thought in what she figured out about the human consciousness.
She was way ahead of the curve in how she was thinking through things, and the practicality of everything she did taught to the next level, so that as you were doing X, you were learning Y, and Y was teaching to Z, and it was a progression. And she gave you the freedom to learn at your own pace and to fly ahead. Because I remember, like, when I got out of Montessori, and I only did it pre-K through kindergarten, I mean, I was just so far ahead of everyone. It gave me a massive boost ahead in life.
There's so much to talk about there. For one thing, the gorgeousness and the structure that she created, in my mind, is partly that she really understood that everyone needs the experience of being new, the experience of being an intermediate, and the experience of being a mentor, right? So she clustered kids in 3-year kind of clumps. And so kids would successively, I'm new in this year, I'm not the beginner in this year, and then I'm the mentor in this year. And so everyone gets this experience over and over and over throughout life of being new again, of not being the new person, and then of being the sage. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom there that I think a lot of our organizations could really learn from.
And it's a constant ongoing process that continues onward.
Yeah.
So you went to Montessori, you got out public school, and then you still have a lot of interesting backstory in early life. Would you mind sharing some of that?
I was the kid with a speech impediment. I was the kid with red hair, which made me stand out, right? I was the kid whose parents split up, which back in the 70s, that was still kind of rare. So that was like the first, I think that my parents were the first. So there were a lot of things that made me stand out. And this is in spite of the fact that in those days, I was really, really, really shy. But by virtue of all those shifts and changes in my family life, I ended up moving a ton and changing schools a ton. And I learned how to make friends, and I learned how to assert, and I learned how to communicate. And I learned how to participate socially, probably by virtue of the fact that it was the best bet I had for surviving all the changes that I was going through. And so by the time I hit college, I was very much an extrovert. I was very much an adventurer. I knew that I wanted travel to be a big part of my life. I knew that I was very curious about how the world really works. And probably because of the early cultural exposure that I had, I just loved studying cultures and history and politics and how do all these things play out over time. And so I barreled right into an honors program that let me lump all of that into my own kind of course of study. And lo and behold, this is kind of funny. So Rocky, you know that I was in the Army. You know that I'm a beauty school dropout, right? Like there's really not many people I can't find something in common with. And one thing I really felt in studying history was I was really drawn to the hot spot at the time. It was the 80s. The hot spot was Latin America. The U.S. government was very active there. It was just all over the news. And we don't have to get political on this, but I was really, really curious about the grassroots movements and the role of the Catholic Church in grassroots movements, et cetera, et cetera. So I go down there for a service project. And this service project is kind of unique because I was really clear. I don't want to just go as an exchange student. I don't want to just go on a tour. I want to go and I want to participate. And so I found this wacky program called Peacework. It's out of, it's at Virginia Tech. An amazing human being named Steve Darr started it. And he would take kids from the Soviet Union, is what it was called at the time, and the US, and put them in areas of contention on a service project. Because his thought was, if we get humans helping other humans together in areas where the power structures are at odds, then everyone starts to experience each other as human beings. Kind of lovely, right? So off we go. My first time traveling on my own. I'm going to Nicaragua. And we get to the dusty country, and the Soviets show up, and none of them are students. They're all construction workers, which made a lot of sense because we were there to build a healthcare center. And so that was shock number one. Shock number two was that Daniel Ortega had just been voted out of power, and Violeta Chamorro was coming in. And so communism was officially over, and there was going to be a peaceful transfer of power, and blah, blah, blah. And we go to this tent, like tarp kind of, and we're there to meet the families who are going to host us. And all the families wanted a kid from the U.S. They didn't want a Soviet. So can you guess why?
They wanted an escape?
Well, they wanted someone who could be a patron afterwards, and they didn't trust the earning power of the Soviets to be able to help them support their families afterwards, right? So it was really kind of an eye-opener. That was one huge eye-opener. The other was really at the end of the summer when we had been working in the dust, had our conflicts, had tools stolen, right, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the summer, the mom of my beautiful family, she sat me down and she said, this is really sweet that you guys came. It's really kind. And she said, but next time stay home and send a check.
So that is the thing that comes up in all of these, what are they called? Because the kids do them. I forget the right word for it. They go on, it's not a retreat. They take kids from here. They raise money here to pay for their trip, to go spend a week in a poor community. And literally the kids are raising $2,000-$3,000 to go on this trip. And it's like, is that truly like the $2,000 to $3,000 would do so much more help than you going there for a week and playing games and becoming enlightened? And so that is not, there are books about that when giving hurts. And it's along the lines of, from a charity standpoint, because I've seen it not so much with South America, but especially with Africa. You're going in and putting your viewpoints on these people. You're not listening to their needs, and you're wasting 10x the money. If you'll go into their, support their existing structures and help that, you can spend a fraction of the money and have a much better outcome. And part of it is to make those local organizations self-sufficient going forward.
Okay, so this is what was textbook about this, right? Because here we are, and we're there to build a healthcare center, right? And no one ever helps us from the local community. The kids, like malnutrition, it's really bad. Like the houses have a dirt floor, like it's really poor. And we get up every day, and the Russians are working in Speedos because it's so hot for them. They're so not used to this. And they brought in cases of vodka, right, that they put into water bottles to smuggle in, like entire boxes of quote unquote water bottles. full. So they're hungover every day. Well, probably not, but we were because we weren't used to it. So tools are being stolen. No one's participating. They're all nice. And then one day, some other organization comes in and they have water pipes so that the women won't have to walk as far to get water, and they won't have to keep water in their huge cisterns right outside of their homes. And the whole community showed up helping dig the lines to lay the pipes. And it's exactly what you're saying. She said to me, and I have really reflected on this, there were people that we met there that had a chemistry degree. There were people that we met that were doctors. There were people that, like, we met people who were highly, highly educated, and they didn't have jobs because of the economic embargo, right? They didn't have opportunity to use their abilities. And when she said that to me, she said, look, she's like, the money that you guys saved or raised to come here, if we put that all together, that could build us a factory, and that would give us jobs. And it just struck me like a ton of bricks. And honestly, Rocky, that is what made me go to business school.
You don't learn much in business school, I found.
I know, I noticed that.
They create people who create those projects that you were on.
Well, I did go to a global program, but yeah, I think most of my insights have just come from watching how things work, right?
And I think this is a quote that comes out of your book. It seems to kind of fit at this moment. It's your inner truth doesn't necessarily conform to social norms. Examining it, living by it, and taking the road less traveled as a result can challenge your social safety.
Oh my God, it's so true.
So to me, what really jumped out is you're challenging your social safety net. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's interesting because I've worked with so many high performers. I've worked as an executive coach and a cultural strategist for 20 years, just about. Yeah, 19, actually, now that I sit and count. And one of the things I've really seen, and I see this play out definitely with high performers, is that we are so good at curating who we are to fit into the world we aspire to, right? And we are expert at it. We are expert. And once we start making those little incisions and severings of aspects of our soul, of ourself, of our natural proclivities that may not fit in, right? We keep doing that, seeking safety and seeking acceptance. And what's interesting is the more we do that, the more we are convinced that we have done it by necessity, right? We are absolutely convinced, well, I did that because I had to. And one of the things I've seen in these conversations is that this drive to succeed oftentimes is really underpinned by so much fear of showing up as who we truly are. And so when I work with highly accomplished people, a lot of times the assumptions are that, well, gosh, if I go back and uncover that, I'm going to blow everything. I'm going to lose everything. And I laugh and I say, well, that's what happens when you shove something in the dark, is it starts to seem bigger and bigger and bigger than it really is. But oftentimes the reclaiming process is much more subtle, and it's not like you're going to blow up your home, right? It's not like you're going to stand on the board table and play the ukulele naked, although, but like the shifts that help get us closer to our truth oftentimes are so subtle and so profoundly empowering that the shifts are felt in beautiful kind of extensions outward like a wave, like a ripple. And it's something other people respond to because they can feel that they are in the presence of someone, A, who knows who they are, which is the definition of gravitas, and B, who feels safe in their own skin. How compelling is that?
It's amazing. I guess I was kind of lucky in the workforce. I used to keep making these career limiting moves.
I love it. Oh my God.
Telling the truth. So it helped me get out of that whole path. And what I would realize, I'm like, wait a minute. You want me to work 50% harder for 20% more for the possibility that one day I will get a reward? I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm not going to play that game.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love it that you said career limiting moves. They had an acronym for that. When I worked in marketing at UPS, I was part of their corporate marketing team. They called it a CLM.
Yep. CLM.
Career limiting move. They said that they had a gym. They had a brand new headquarters and they had a gym. And it was beautiful, beautiful new headquarters in Atlanta. They had pulled up stakes from Connecticut and moved to Atlanta. And the orientation, they said to females specifically, they said, well, just so you know, if you choose not to shave your legs or armpits, it's really considered a CLM. Isn't that amazing? That would never fly now. The other thing, they had a committee on women in pants.
The world's changed.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you're talking to a company that says you wear your keys on your right pinky finger, because that's the fastest way to have them ready. And we never make a left turn. We only make right turns. I mean, they are the model of efficiency. But with that comes another, there is a price to pay for that. And that kind of brings me to another quote in your book, which takes us the opposite direction, which is aligning with our inner truth means abandoning all external authority and moving into an evaluative process where no one can tell us we got it right. And I tell you, when you can abandon all of that and you own your life, that's where happiness happens. That's where you become alive, because you can say screw you to the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's when you're the man in the arena, right? You're the man, dirty or not, sand on your face. You are standing in your truth. I strongly believe that. And like you, I think a lot of my freedom to ask these questions came because I was an outlier in corporate America. I didn't come from people who had ever been in that. So I always felt like the court jester, right? Which gave me freedom to be true to myself while I was in these environments. And so like you, I could look and see up and down and all around the conformity.
You know what? This just gave me an aha moment. I now realize why I didn't fit in, because I didn't understand. See, when I worked for a company, I thought my job was to make the company profitable. I didn't realize the job was to play all of these social games. I'm like, hey, because most of my life was in sales. I'm like, I'm out there fighting. I'm not going to come in here and fight. I don't have energy for 2 wars. Yeah. And B, we're here to make the company money. Everything else is wasting time and energy. So let's get to work.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of time and energy is wasted and expended on a lot of tribalism, right? And it's so unfortunate. That's actually what led me to quit my job. I was doing incredibly well. I'd gone from Coca-Cola to UPS to IBM to Korn Ferry. I helped start the office in South Beach for all of the region in Latin America. And then I'd gotten picked up by Star Media, who was one of our clients. They had the biggest private placement at the time of any .com ever. And then went to Time Warner. So I was doing really, really, really well. I had become a VP. I was not even 33. I was making more money than everyone in my family combined. And it just occurred to me at some point, I started to observe around me, like how much energy is wasted on not being human. I thought about it, I was like, gosh, all of us have a resume. We all have these skill sets. We know how to comport ourselves and be appropriate. Why do we all hate our jobs? Like, no one's dying in a ditch. There aren't bullets flying overhead, right? Like, why are we so miserable? There's freaking air conditioning. The phones work, right? There's a Coke machine that's free. Like what are we so miserable? Like, we have health insurance. What are we complaining about? And it was funny because this was the period at AOL they called the dead man walking, right? I don't know if you remember this. Fast Company had an issue that came out, and it had the yellow man, the walking dude, that was the logo for AOL. And they had it on the cover, and they said dead man walking. And this Fast Company really just dinging the tarnation out of this company that had just effectively bought Time Warner. And we had gone through 3 presidents in 6 months, so it was highly unstable, and layoffs were coming. It was miserable. It was toxic, and it was funny because I was right at the cusp of being C-suite proximate, right? And they were giving me a lot of money and giving me a lot of signs that I was next, right? And I realized I would get on the elevator, and if someone senior to me who did not know me personally got on, they would stare at their phone to the elevator. They wouldn't greet or not, like they would just stare at their phone. But if the cleaning lady got on, the cleaning lady from Poland who barely spoke English, she would get on the elevator and she'd say, "Hi, how was your day?" And I was like, who's really the leader here? Right? I mean, human connection is a powerful leadership skill. Who's the leader here? So all of this converged around exactly these questions, right? Why is it that when we get a bunch of human beings together and organize them to accomplish a task, the artifice and the politics come out? Why is that? And where does that come from? So that's a lot of what drove me to leave and to start the company in 2002. Oh my God, I'm dating myself, Rocky.
I was going to say, I think it came from Lord of the Flies. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man Podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man Podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So, you wrote a book. What inspired you to write the book, Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success?
All these observations that we've been touching upon have multitudes of other experiences and observations that also were happening. And so I left corporate America in 2002. I started a company basically to take transformational tools into corporations to ease this relationship with work. My core fascination is, what is the relationship between self and work? And that's what really drove me, because I can look out the window and I can see a blade of grass. It is not fighting being a blade of grass. A grain of sugar is not fighting being a grain of sugar. The wind does not fight being the wind. Why is it that human beings fight function and contribution? Why? Really simple stuff. And so I figured I don't know the answers to that questions, but I do know that there are countless wisdom tools and cognitive behavioral tools, et cetera, to help people get underneath it. And so off I go. I start a company. Everyone thinks I'm crazy because 9/11's just happened. The economy's in the tank, right, et cetera. I'm like, if not now, when? If not me, who, right? And so I start the company and go right back to all the heads of HR of companies I've worked for, and they bring me in. And below the radar, like now, if you go into your your LinkedIn, if you look at the cover of HBR, every other cover is about being human at work, empathy at work, burnout, right? Blah, 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 blah. This is way before that. I literally got really curious about how do we shift people's relationship to themselves and their ability to priority care of self in the midst of 24/7ization of work, right? Of work expectations. And so I started a company, and through that and through study with, gosh, you name it, any guru. By guru, I don't mean like the ones who are like position themselves as gurus. I mean the real ones who you never find and they never use the G word. You have to like somehow end up in their presence, and then like I'm not talking about the self-promoting ones. I'm talking about the obscure ones. So I studied with as many of the obscure ones as became non-obscure to me, and began working on strategy and executive coaching, specifically looking at high performers. Because one of the things I found is that high performers, no matter where they are throughout the organization, they are the influencers. They are the ones who have the energy to create the ripple out effect, and what they do impacts everyone. And so by having these conversations, it was amazing, right? You get assigned to coach someone, or they're part of a cohort that you're helping optimize performance, right? We created this amazing program called Momentum, right? Because you can't call it Don't Burn Out, right? You got to call it Momentum because it's got testosterone. We'll go, I want momentum, right? So we had this amazing program that we teach, and people sign up for it and they get coached by virtue of it. And I started to realize, once you close the door and you talk to people about what's really going on, they don't know who they are. They can tell you what they've accomplished, and they can tell you what pisses them off and what frustrates them. They don't know their joy. How many of us know our joy? I can ask anyone on the street, what's pissed you off today, right? And they'll have a lot of answers. But a lot of people, if you say, what's really giving you joy today? It kind of takes you off, right? Because it's switching the channel. And the channel we're used to, we're really accustomed to. So I wrote the book as an outcome of working with those folks and of sharing with them tools and ways to really ask that question, well, how do I kick ass and be true to myself? And so that's where the book came from.
And you can do both. It's not a choice. I think a lot of people go, oh, I have to do this or this. No, there's a way to achieve both. Question, what does radical success mean to you?
To me, it means a success that is true to yourself. The people hear the word radical and they think it's extremist, right? Or I'm Elon Musk successful, right? No, radical success.
Is he successful?
Well,
I challenge that. He may have a great company, but is he successful in life?
I am absolutely with you right there. Like, that is absolutely what I'm saying, is that people could say that radical success means off the chart wealthy, off the chart famous, off the chart powerful, off the chart influential. The word radic, right? The Latin root of the word radical comes from root. The radix is the root, right? So when I started to think about success, and that the success that society teaches about is usually some form or some some amalgamation of power, of position, of money, of influence, right, of all those things. And maybe if you're a yoga teacher, that looks different than if you're an investment banker, but the basic parameters of it are kind of the same. It's power and influence and somehow the value that comes back to you. And the more I worked with folks across the broad spectrum, the more I saw, wow, we really need to throw all that away and create an idea of success that has to do with how we feel every day and how connected am I to myself? How much deep, I think, rootedness can I feel no matter how hard the winds are blowing around me, right? And so thank you so much for asking that. Like, honestly, I'm so in love with this idea that if success is not radically true of who you are, then it's not success at all.
And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. They're on somebody else's train tracks. They're not on their path. And it's unfortunate. And then one day they wake up and go, is this all there is? Is this what I wanted? And then they have to start up their mountain instead of the wrong mountain. So there's another quote in the book that kind of struck out at me. And it kind of goes to this point. If you can see your version of life clearly enough to recognize it as the result of your choices so far, you're only a heartbeat away from asking, is that all there is?
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
And I think that's the question people need to ask themselves. Is this all there is? And if you're asking that question, then you're not living in alignment with what you want. You're not living a life of radical success. And so it's time to change, because you are going to face curveballs, and you can throw it at yourself or you can let someone else throw it at you. And it's surprising. Well, and it's surprising both ways. We've had a lot of guests on who've had near-death experiences. And those are the ones that kind of, many of them get the right curveball. I've met a few who got the wrong curveball from that, unfortunately. Well, they become very self-serving.
There's always one, Rocky.
There's always one. So there were a ton of stories in the book. Do you have a favorite one?
You know what? Yeah. And I forget the pseudonym that I gave him in the book, but it's a guy I coached who was morbidly obese. And he was a father of three, sole breadwinner, middle management at one of the world's most demanding combination of a financial and a media company, and just such a great guy. And he joined this high performer cohort that I was talking about. And when we talked about his goal setting, so much had to change, right? His commute was long. Like everything about his life, the way he saw it, was conspiring against him being able to be more true to himself, right? So he was really seeing himself as being in this oppositional relationship with the life he had built. And what was interesting was we carved out some really small things he could move, because a lot of times once you shift a small thing, and it can be this small, it can be, I'm going to turn off my phone while I take a shower, right? It can be, I'm going to carve out a 20-minute break to actually eat my lunch, not in front of the computer screen, right? Like when people are in the path to connect more fully to themselves, the shifts can start really small, like they aren't seismic. And what was interesting was when we did a follow-up session, he It gave me 30 reasons why nothing had worked, nothing had worked, nothing had worked, nothing had worked. And even those small things he hadn't really done. And I finally just looked at him and I said, let's call him Bob, because I can't remember what I called him in the book. I said, Bob, I get it. I said, but did it ever occur to you that if you fought this hard to be the man that you want to be, as you're fighting to keep this overweight, miserable, trapped dude on life support, like, what if you fought this hard to be the you that's yearning to come into form? And he just looked at me and he sat back, right? And it was like that moment. And that was my favorite. Because he went on and he did it. He did it for quite a while. I'm not in touch with him now, but he did some really amazing things for himself. And he had to deal with a lot of change back pressure from his family. And part of what we have to do is we have to change lovingly, right? When we change, we have to understand that it may scare the socks off of a lot of people around us. So we have to change lovingly, and we have to hold their feelings respectfully, not caving to them, but we have to acknowledge them, and we have to learn probably some new communication skills around how to talk about all that. Because everyone wants to feel safe, bottom line.
And when you make changes in your life, what I find is the people around you start to freak out and try to pull you down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to be aware that this is going to happen and be ready to handle it and figure out how you're going to fight that battle, because they don't like change, even when it's you changing. Yeah.
Well, think about a relationship like a rubber band. Like, if you and I were old friends, there would be an invisible rubber band around us. And that rubber band would represent all the common unspoken agreements that we had ever made about who each other are, right? Now, the further I walk away from those agreements, right, if I start to shift who I am, that rubber band gets really tight, right? It gets tighter and tighter because I'm walking further and further away. Now, I still think I'm in relationship, right? But you're going, I don't like this, I don't like this. And so a couple things can happen, right? You can let go of your end of the rubber band, and that smacks me, right? Like, oh my God, you left me, right? Or I can come flying back because you yanked and say, you better get back over here, right? So there's a lot of relationship dynamics. And part of what I say to people when they game change, one, keep your process your own. And I don't say that because it's brainwashing, because it's of your own making. It's not up to me how you game change. It's up to you how you game change, right? And keep your process your own. Don't share it until you feel like you don't need the training wheels anymore. Keep it to yourself. You made it. Say to someone, "Oh, you seem." Say, "Yeah, I'm kind of experimenting with how I want to move through my days," right? Or whatever. Keep it your own, and be compassionate to people. The more compassionate you can be to yourself about your need to game change, because this is a fundamental need. This is why we come into this world, is to learn to be true to who we are. Like, that's our first job, right? So be compassionate to you, and that's going to help you be compassionate to others for not understanding.
So true. So based on our conversation today, what's one action step that people can take to move forward this week?
I love this. One of my favorite things to start people out with is to overcome what I like to call the habit of discontent, right? The habit of discontent. Our nervous system is predisposed to scan for what is wrong, right? That's why if it bleeds, it leads, right? And that's not only true in news, right? That's also true in the human brain, right? We tend to look for what's wrong. And so one of the things I love to invite people to do is every night before you go to bed, I want you to do an inventory of every moment in the day that has truly given you happiness, right? Like I took a hike early this morning and looking at the glistening ice gave me happiness, right? Like whatever those things are, take an inventory, replay them. Because by doing that, you're building and you're reinforcing a neurological pattern of positivity, right? You're not brainwashing away the bad stuff. I'm not saying it's not there, but you're just tipping the scales a little from the blood and guts.
And like everything you talked about, it's small changes that add up over time and compound, and they lead to radical success.
Oh, thank you, Becky.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Appreciate what I have.
So simple.
Really? It's that simple.
And yet so hard.
Wait. Can I add to it?
Sure.
Do things that make your heart happy. It's funny, if you're really filling up your heart, you don't want as much. And so you do appreciate what you have more. So do things that make your heart happy. And they may not be easy, but do them.
Everyone who's listening to this has everything they need in life. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Playing guitar. Oh my God. Why did I wait till I was 40?
Come on, you grew up in the 70s. Didn't you have an electric guitar?
No. My family loved music. Any gathering always had music and people would dance, etc., but no one was musical. So I have been the audiophile wannabe for most of my life. I just started playing about 10 years ago, and it's slow going. Let me tell you.
I'm told if you can learn, I think, 3 chords, you can play any song.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that.
I think they fake their way through it.
Yeah.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Don't confuse pleasure for joy.
2 different things, right?
Yeah,
And we get them confused. We seek pleasure instead of seeking joy.
exactly.
If people would like to find you and connect, learn more about what you have, get your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on Facebook under my first and last name. They can find me on our corporate website. It's balanceintegration.com. On Twitter, I'm Corporate Yogi. I don't tweet a ton, I'll be honest. And I'm on LinkedIn, both as an individual and as my company. And you can find the book, Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success, at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And there's a bunch of resources associated with it on our website. And I lead masterminds. So we just kicked one off yesterday. And we'll be kicking off another one in May. So I'd love to have you on.
Awesome. And thank you so much for joining us today.
You're awesome, Rocky. Thank you so much, Montessori brother.
I do love the Montessori method of teaching. My mom's sister was a trainer and learned directly from Maria Montessori. And I went through the program as a kid. You do have to make sure that the school is true to the philosophy and that the teachers are appropriately trained, and it's not just the name on the front of the building. It really helps to teach your kids how to think and how to do many of the practical things in life, and it encourages them to learn and to continue to learn. I also have to say I love career-limiting moves. They kept me off the wrong ladder and allowed me to have time to be with my kids as they grew up, instead of chasing something that had little value and at the end of the day wasn't going to make a difference. This week's action step was to overcome a habit of discontent. Every night, do an inventory of your day and see what's giving you happiness. And there should be many things in your day that give you happiness. I find joy from simple things like hot water and a temperature-controlled home and a nice cozy bed, which means my mornings start off pretty awesome because I already have all those little things. I have to say, by the end of the day, I'm tired and I probably fall asleep before I get to this. But I'll try and review my day. I do something similar in the morning, though. And just remember, it's baby steps. Small changes over time compound. And you can't imagine how far you can come over time. But you got to start. You start finding the joy and changing your life so it is full of it. Next episode is Chris Prefontaine, and we are going to chat about real estate and his life journey. If you like today's episode, please share it with someone you think would benefit. I would appreciate that. And thank you. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.